Okay, so Flo just won the Austrian National, so we're gonna do a short profile showing the deck that we built together, and because he's the winner, he may explain all the choices and everything.
Oh my god. Alright, so we played Snake Eyes Fire King, as everyone who watched the live stream could already tell. I'm not gonna go into the detail on Snake Eyes cards because we've seen it enough already. I think this is as standard as it gets. We play the 1-for-1 because it bridges the engines together. You can 1-for-1 into Bonix and then just go into your Fire King cards. The only thing that's a little bit different is the 3 Kierans instead of 2. In this deck we're not playing any hand traps, we are mainly on breakers, and the idea was to win if you go first all of the time pretty much. That's why this is at 3. It's just there to dodge hand traps on Snake Eye Ash or Poplar or whatever. And also your hands, while you draw this, become incredibly harder to interact with because you just have this in hand, and if they somehow try to kill your boards, you can just always use this and trigger Garunix and pop a card, bring back the Arvada, and then they have to play through Arvada as well and the pop effect. So yeah, that was really good. Then for the breakers we have the triple Fenrirs. This was here because we figured you can special summon this into a typical Snake Eye board, and if they go IP and they go into SP, you can just as turn player use Fenrir's Chainlink 1 and then target the Appaloosa or the IP, and they can't respond with their IP banish effect. So that is really crazy, and also to threaten Appaloosa you can just summon this guy and try to attack. Also it's really good in simplified game states, and it adds you a monster that you can discard for 1-for-1. Then we run triple Droplet, triple Talents, triple Book of Moon. These were arguably the Eclipse, sorry. These were arguably the best cards that we could play. There was Cosmic in the deck at some point, but we figured Book of Eclipse is a little bit better. Or rather, we cut the Cosmics for Impermanence, because in most matchups you rather want to draw this instead of a Cosmic Cyclone anyway. We didn't expect a lot of Fire King, so we were the only people playing that deck, and if you don't have a lot of Fire King you don't need the Cosmics in the main. And if you go first against Senpai Dragon, at least I always went first. I set up my boards. If they hand trap me, I use Talents, rip apart their hand, take away the engine or whatever I can play around, and then make a field, and then they die anyway. And the last card is called by the Grave. This was initially like this, but then I just added the 3rd Talents because I thought I really want to have Talents whenever I go first to just look at the opponent's hand, because this effect is just too busted.
Also it added up more space for side deck patterns, which was a bit struggle.
Will you change anything in the main deck?
No, I think it's absolutely perfect the way it was. Will you change anything?
No, not for this tournament. I think the non-energy was pretty good.
Okay, now to the extra.
Yep. It's also very standard. Silantis, Princess, SP, Emblo Whale, the stuff for the OTK, the two Charmers, Nightmare Phoenix, Appaloosa, this. And then there's 4 cards, I guess, that are in the fire. 2 that are standard in the Fire King version. You have these 2. This is necessary because there's a combo line where you dump this to the graveyard beforehand and you add back Bonix, and then you send Arvata from the deck to summon this back, and then you make Princess with it, and then you end on like Appo in the front, and then you have Silantis down here and Arvata here, and then yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And then the last 2 cards were more or less flex spots. We decided to play the Fucho. This is very nice against Tempai. If they shifter you, you just summon this, pass, and hopefully they don't have Santa Claus. So that's the game plan basically. And the last card was the flex spot, it was Goddess. Goddess is nice against the Towers decks, and if they don't expect it, it can randomly steal games. So yeah, it was really good. And then we have the side deck. So this deck is only on breakers, so if you go second against branded and they puppet lock you, it's game over. So the idea was we need more cards to handle the branded matchup somehow, and funny enough I played against 3 or 4 branded decks in the course of the tournament. So yeah, there's 3 Ash here and 3 of this guy, the Organism. This was last minute idea, was pretty genius in my opinion. You can just side this in, going first or second, and then you flip it, and hopefully they didn't keep in their Shadow Dragon. Shoutouts to my opponent. opponent in Swiss and in top 4 because he did. And then they can't play anymore if they don't have any spell trap removal in their deck. This just floods them out, and then you can hopefully grind with them and clear their board, and then you still win against the puppet lock anyway. Also, Ash is like nice against other random decks. You can side this in against Labyrinth, for example, but we also decided to side this in a mirror match when going first, because if they have talents, they're gonna keep it in anyway. And if you have Ash or not, doesn't matter. And you also have already Fire Monsters in the grave, so if you drop this, it's completely fine. But we don't side this in when going second. Then more floodgates, skill drain, discard. Yeah, I mean, in some matchups where you can just flood them out, where it's really funny, like Melodious and stuff, you just side in 6 floodgates and then they hopefully can't play. But against all of the other matchups, skill drain is just pretty crazy, and Scout should be at 1 or banned in my opinion. And then there's the 3 Dark Ruler no more. The problem with this deck was we wanted to play Metal Tronos, but then there was the issue that we didn't have any space in the extra deck because we needed the Fucho, and I wanted to play Goddess, and it was just no space. And Metal Tronos is just better in the pure deck, because when you can reduce the game state or simplify it with hand traps, then Metal Tronos becomes absolutely crazy. But in this deck, this is not an option, so we just slap down Dark Ruler and negate the Harbinger and everything else that's on the board, because they can always play. If they have Ash and Witch or something, they always end on the Harbinger board and we cannot interact with it. So we just slap this down. And sometimes, if you're ballsy, you can even call battle phase or end of main phase, and then they bring out the IP because they're scared of evenly. Then you just use this, and then everything is negated, and then you play and crack their board that way. And the last 3 cards were generic spell trap removal. We figured when going second in the mirror, since we cannot simplify the game state enough because they can just play whenever they want, what we typically lose to is not the engine on the field or the board that they create, but rather the floodgates that they're siding. So we needed spell trap removal in order to deal with skill drain or deck lockdown or whatever people are now playing. And yeah, it didn't really come up. I sided it in always when I was playing the mirror match, just because I was scared of skill drain, deck lockdown and stuff. But yeah.
So that's it. Congratulations to the win for the Austrian nationals. Any last words?
Yeah, of course we have to do shoutouts.
Maybe first you should explain why we played the Fire King version over the pure version. I think that's probably the most interesting part to anyone watching.
It's a good point, yeah. So the idea of the Fire King deck was, in the pure deck, the board is not as formidable as this deck, because if everything goes through in the combo, you end on a board that is so hard to interact with because everything is just layered, and you start popping stuff and you negate monsters, and all of your stuff is pretty big on the field. And even you don't care as much about Cosmic on your field spell, because if everything just gets wiped, it just comes back. But this deck plays incredibly well with breakers into the pure matchup, so the pure matchup was pretty much free in my opinion. And if you play pure, you can't, in my opinion, play this with breakers because your board is not strong enough and you can't rely on your breaker cards to secure your board. But in the Fire King deck, the board is typically so strong that it does not really matter what you draw outside of your engine. Yeah, so that was the theory behind it.
Also, the Fire King engine gives you way more options to different boards that let you adjust to the decks that your opponent plays. Because you can end on Silantis and Appaloosa way more often to play around evenly or other cards. And also it gives you, when you go second, it gives you way more pushes to break through their board and also kill them in the same turn, even in the mirror match.
And since this is Austrian nationals, you can expect a lot of rogue, and we wanted to have a deck that is solid against rogue. And the Fire King package is just completely crazy in a grind game because Kieran just pops stuff on the field, and that's of course really great against rogue. So yeah.
How many Snake Eye did you play? Pure Snake Eye?
None.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I did too.
That's what we
And I
expected,
played
yeah.
2 Fire King Snake Eyes. I played against him and also the other guy from the testing circle, Philip. Yeah, so it paid off. Yeah, then the shoutouts, of course. Shoutouts to everyone in the testing circle. This guy, off the camera. All of the guys from Yu-Gi-Oh! Austria, the guys from the Linz community, everyone on this table, and everyone who basically knows me through this game. It feels really good to finally make it.
Thank you for the deck profile.